welcome to episode number 30 of In Pursuit of Clarity, entitled Rejecting Fringe Loserdom. As things heat up in the political world and we near a monumental election in November, there's been much talk about the relation of the dissident right, for lack of a better term, to figures like Trump, and I wanted to discuss what I feel is a larger dynamic at play here. Those of us that oppose globalism, open borders, and the rapid reshaping of our culture and replacement of our people often feel some anger and resentment towards their more moderate counterparts. For example, those that might have some nationalist sentiment, but little understanding of the importance of Western culture or the value of preserving our people and their customs and traditions. This has caused a very vocal subset to mock and deride those more middle-of-the-road individuals, and invariably push them away. These efforts seem to be led by a few self-titled alt-right ringleaders who've done exactly this sort of thing for years on end, and seem to be masters of the art. In a sense, they've embraced being eternal losers, permanently acting as the aggressive optics of niche, on the fringe, radical politics. The embrace of this mindset becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a recipe for paralysis, and it's been maddening to watch for the past many years. And it's one of the reasons I started down my creative path. Embracing radical ideas is one thing, and makes perfect sense in a world that's become so deeply sick and corrupt, whose institutions have strayed so far from the ideal. Wearing the uniform of a radical, shouting from every rooftop about how radical or dissident one is a very different thing, and plays perfectly into the hands of those who seek to keep our ideas marginalized, and to keep this groundswell of energy from growing to a critical mass in order to attain proper expression. Speaking personally, and I like to think many of you agree, I'm not the least bit interested in this look how correct I am and how wrong you are mentality, or wearing my ideas or political philosophy as some badge of honor, or to be able to say, see, I told you so, at some point in the future. My focus is instead on winning with respect to the cultural, and one might even say spiritual, war being so aggressively waged. I've often wondered if some of the ringleaders and conductors on the alt-right or dissident right lack this same instinct, and to be frank, I've even wondered if they might be playing a role to ensure this energy never finds a proper channeling. We're living in a historic moment in time right now. The corporate media is less trusted than it's ever been. Record numbers are dissatisfied with how our particular brand of capitalism is taking shape, and how it so well serves and rewards a parasitic instinct. And the faith in our corrupt institutions, from the FBI to the intelligence agencies to the State Department, and nearly every last vestige of the DC bureaucracy, is at an all-time low. There are millions of people, not just in the US, but throughout much of the Western world, seeking a better path. We have a great opportunity at the moment, and in the coming months and years, to reach out and attempt to present a healthier vision, to help cause them to consider new ideas and new approaches. Everywhere, we should be creating bridges and helping usher people across them in our direction, and ignoring those who wear their edgy beliefs as something of a fashion brand, and seek to push this frame of thinking onto others. It's my contention that those who so openly laugh at or deride passionate, MAGA-esque boomer types are doing a profound disservice. Never has there been more fertile ground for our message to take root, or a better opportunity to help people further construct their own context picture with regards to what's going wrong and how to best fix it. It's a mistake to think that this more moderate group has a keen understanding of the finer points on racial or cultural or geopolitical issues, and has taken their stance accordingly. The vast majority simply haven't been exposed to enough information to take those additional steps, because we live in an era of extreme censorship, and within a system in which our points of view aren't allowed to be voiced across media and popular culture. Instead of calling these people idiots and feeling smug for having done so, why not take full advantage of this pivotal moment and help produce a sea change in the public discourse accordingly? I tend to think this is the greatest fear of those moneyed powers on the other side, and one of the reasons so much effort goes into creating these chasms between, for example, those on the right with greater racial and cultural awareness and a deeper understanding of the games being played, and those with more vague and ill-defined nationalist sentiment. Stoking this great divide doesn't serve our interests in any way. And it's important to clarify, I'm not suggesting anyone moderates or compromises on their own viewpoints in the least, with regards to what they believe to be true and what they believe is the best path forward. I'm only referring to how we choose to interface and communicate with the world at large. The Trump phenomenon is practically unprecedented. The man is filling stadiums to capacity, and his opponents would be thrilled with a quarter of the attendance in even their most aggressively touted appearances. There are those in our ranks that don't see the potential here, that want to swim against this tide. I strongly believe this is a mistake, and would forever be seen as a missed opportunity we'd all live to regret. Picture a massive lumbering ship on the ocean. As anti-establishment dissidents, we can either barrel into this ship head-on and inevitably get bowled over and get nowhere, or focus instead on tapping the rudder. I certainly have strongly held beliefs, and with respect to myself and with regard to my thought processes and internal monologue, I'm something of an uncompromising ideological purist. I feel I've seen enough context to plant my feet solidly, and although I'm always open to well-thought-out differing points of view, it'd take a great deal to sway me on most fronts. At the same time, I recognize that the majority of the public isn't eye-to-eye with me on every issue. So when I communicate my ideas, I try to present them accordingly. An analogy might be my walking out to the center of the bridge to attempt to guide a viewer or listener across, as opposed to mockingly shouting at them from the extreme end of said bridge, and then wondering why they're not taking the entire journey across by themselves. This latter approach is doomed to fail, and ultimately gets us nowhere. This very moment, there are huge numbers of people disgusted with the power structure of recent decades, and actively seeking bridges to cross. Bernie Sanders represents one of these, for example, positing himself as a leftist escape path from a corrupt and destructive establishment. The problem, of course, is that this is a fleeing from one disaster and into another. The type of socialism he espouses, in a multicultural nation with open borders and little to no social cohesion or unified sense of identity, would be the death of this nation. Our goal should be the creation of a much more sturdy and attractive bridge, and then the cultivation of patience enough to help walk people across it, and the finding of creative and novel ways to help them take those first few steps, and creative and novel ways to help illustrate the necessity of doing so. It'd be difficult to exaggerate the importance of this moment in time around the world. Brexit, the failed impeachment, the transparently obvious attempt of the DNC to rig another election, which will continue over the coming weeks and months, and Merkel's attempt to rig the political process in Germany. And in my opinion, we'll likely even see some justice soon, with regards to the Ukraine grift engaged in by Biden and others, as well as the attempted coup. And even if we didn't see justice in these cases, such a significant amount of the public knows what occurred that the end result effect, with regards to the prevailing mood and mindset, is similar. The discontent and outright rage is stoked ever further, and eventually will find an expression. But I think we need to understand our current position and choose our battles wisely and fight them properly. In the art of judo, one of the core principles is to use an opponent's own body weight against them, a principle called, and pardon my pronunciation, Seiryuku-zinyu, which translates to something like maximum efficiency, minimum effort. Our leading dissident thinkers have done the opposite for so long, attacking virtually everything, even potential allies, head-on at every opportunity, and making things much more difficult than they need to be. I think this is sometimes due to their genuineness and honesty and lack of shrewdness and guile, but these positive traits can sometimes render a person impotent when it comes to persuasion or tactful diplomacy. And I'm sorry, but whether we like it or not, we're in a moment of time where we have to understand and employ these arts to some degree. Finally, it's also a vastly healthier and more gratifying way to live. Not seeing a mortal foe around every corner, not having to approach random people as if they were your enemy, and being able to focus on points of agreement more strongly than those of disagreement. Blaming someone for their ignorance is only slightly better than blaming someone for not being physically or intellectually gifted. Western culture has traditionally been hierarchical in structure, and our people naturally learn to trust and respect those in leadership positions, because we once had far greater men in these roles. We can only place so much blame on those who continue to do so, in varying ways and to varying degrees. Those who don't yet recognize just how corrupt our power structures have become, and the specific nature of this corruption. And more importantly, the blame itself doesn't get anyone anywhere. The goal needs to be to walk these people back to sanity, away from this new religion of cultural Marxism, social justice, and forced diversity. And in most cases, this is an incremental process, and one that requires some effort and patience. In summary, if we really seek to gain significant ground rapidly, as opposed to merely be right and wear this rightness as a badge, at some point we need to wrest control of this massive ship and steer it in our preferred direction, not seek to stop it dead in its tracks or blow it to pieces. Be an ideological purist with yourself with regard to your own nature, but perhaps don't expect the same level of awareness from everyone else just yet. I've never seen so many finally waking to the demographic issues we're facing and beginning to understand the hidden hands behind the scenes. And we need to win the fight on this meta level. To end with one of my favorite quotes from one of the greatest minds in history, Johann Goethe said it best, quote, "Divide and rule, the politician cries. Unite and lead is the watchword of the wise." Thanks for listening.